He's staying up a little bit later because we know he's got something to do in the morning, but Alan Jones is back. And I just wanted to say, King, hello. Nice to see you, great man. They know you didn't die, right? Like some of the tributes, they've been beautiful, but I've gone, it's a bit early for these.
Oh, God. I think there's one or two people that hope I had, but never mind.
Now, King, I just wanted to say this to you very publicly because it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's absolutely the case. I learnt how the world worked by listening to you as a kid. I didn't listen to FM radio, I listened to you. I learnt how things worked and didn't work. I learnt what was right and what was wrong. And I've got to say, as a kid who got to live his dream, who, like you, wasn't born into it, just had to work his backside off to get there, I just wanted to say very publicly that without an Alan Jones, I didn't have a hope. And you gave me hope and you gave me focus, and it's an honour to be your colleague for many more years to come here at Sky News.
That's a beautiful thing to say. That's a beautiful thing to say. Well, if you are a manifestation of what might have been learnt from the little bit that I did, Paul, I'm very proud to say that you make me very proud.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, what I think has a few people have missed in the tributes and the conversations and all the rest of it, and is that I think that they have always kind of missed many of your qualities, which are, we know about what you're like when you're chasing an issue, but the way you put a show together, and this is what people have always misunderstood about you, is it's all about passion. It's about a love of the arts, a love of sport, a love of country, yet so few people have really understood that about the way you're able to connect with an audience. And I heard you say today when you mentioned the great John Brennan, who's a name who may not be synonymous with people, but without a John Brennan, there's not an Alan Jones as a broadcaster, that connecting to people's life isn't just talking about the news all the time. It's talking about sport. It's talking about music. It's talking about life.
Yes. See, one of the keys, Paul, that you've just raised there is it's terribly important, and I say this all the time, to be contrived or synthetic.
Yeah.
And I suppose I owe a lot to my parents because in the bush we had nothing. And so you listen to the wireless, or my mother read to me while I combed her hair. And so I learned to love sport through my dad, loved races because we listened to the races every Saturday afternoon. But I loved, we had the Mobile Quest, which had the great opera singers of Australia, and I learned to love opera. And then through literature, I learned to love Bronte and Thackeray and so on. So I'm lucky in that I'm not contrived in my appreciation of these things. I just love them and I love sharing them. But if you don't like those things, and that's why I admired Bob Carr. That's our Premier, you've got to go to the rugby league. I don't like rugby league. May I take a biography of Aristotle with me? And I admired that. He didn't try to pretend he liked something that he didn't like. And it's so transparent, Paul, as you know, and Troy and Rita understand this, they can read fakes from a mile off. I mean, and they mightn't like what we say, but they at least appreciate the fact that we believe what we say.
Well, exactly, and this is what I was texting with somebody who I disagree with on many issues earlier today, and I said, this again is that I can fully respect somebody I disagree with because they're good at their craft. And this is this thing where, look, there's going to be many weeks where people can celebrate your radio craft, but tell me about, I think that there's also part of your career that is not being celebrated enough, which is your time at TUE. The time in the 80s and 90s where you were such a formidable force and you were able to build an audience and do something that we all know few had done before, which was to be able to transfer an audience somewhere else. Tell me about those TUE days.
Well, isn't that extraordinary? Now, someone has sent me a text today. People are absolutely amazing. I've got about 224 of them here, and I promise you all, I will answer them. I've answered the emails, which are enormous, but this is amazing, isn't it? Now, this has been sent to me by Jim, who's watching out there, I know, and it's by a fellow called Timothy someone, I've never heard of him. John Laws acknowledges the most experienced of the talkback practitioners, begins at 2GB next month, and at the same time, a new voice will fill his old spot at 2UE. That voice belongs to Alan Jones, former speechwriter to Malcolm Fraser, just retired Director of the Employers Federation of New South Wales and the present national coach of the all-conquering Wallabies. Yesterday, Jones signed a one-year contract with TUE for an undisclosed sum. As pen met paper, the program director, Mr. Mark Collier, said Jones had, quote, the potential to be the most prominent personality in Sydney radio. unquote. The story said, despite his lack of experience, Jones has a reputation for his dogmatic views and as being a motivator, and his appointment is regarded as a courageous move by 2UE at a time when there is little new talent entering Sydney radio. And then this, John Tingle. And John Tingle is a wonderful broadcaster. John Tingle, who is stepping aside for laws at 2GB, said, quote, he may turn out to be the unexpected star we've been looking for, but everything is stacked against him. He's starting off in radio as an unknown name. Isn't that extraordinary? How people can find this stuff is beyond me, but it's an interesting insight, isn't it?
Oh, look, correct. And look, you've done so much, and I know it's impossible, and it's a silly question to ask, but I'm a silly bloke, as you know, so I have to ask. Of the things you've done on the air, all of those years, what are you most proud of as a broadcaster? An event, an OB, an interview, a string of shows at the Sydney Olympics. What were you most proud of?
Well, I think, Paul, as I've said many times, if you don't do the homework, you won't pass the exam. And I think on major policy issues, I mean, I read a lot, and I feel that we've had very significant changes. I mean, we looked at a couple there with Chris Smith. I mean, the greyhound industry, which is a silly decision, the forced amalgamations of councils, this is the recent stuff. And even today, I think we've all got, and Troy would appreciate this, you would, and Rita and Peter, our team here at Sky, we've got a real battle on education. As I've said, you know, you've got to keep arguing. If you don't have discipline, you don't have content, you don't have education. And we are betraying our kids, this notion that you can't have face-to-face time. The Prime Minister said you should go back. There are rogue premiers who say you can't. They can't present the health evidence that suggests that what they're doing is correct. So we've got to keep here. We can't afford to let our kids down. But if you go right back, I remember the news came in, this is 1990, with 30 years ago, of the Nyngan floods. Now, Nyngan is a little place in Western New South Wales, and no one really knew it. And the stories came in, and Paul, you were most probably still at school, but it was just dreadful. There were people in their kitchens, and the water was rising above their fridges. And I could identify with that because these were people who were like my mother and father. They had nothing, and they were just battlers, and most of what they owned would be on hire purchase, it was called then. And so I thought, well, why don't we have a go? And you never quite know what the power of your audience is. And we raised in 1990, roundabout, it might have been 91 or something, $1.3 million for the people of Nyngan.
Wow.
And I remember going out, and we bought all this stuff, everyone, Woolworths and Coles, everyone pitched in. And the tremendous satisfaction that you get from knowing that you've lifted someone up. I mean, yes, I suppose we do have power. You can do two things with power. You can crush or you can lift. And I think the wonderful thing that you can do in this medium is to lift. And to go out there and see the satisfaction that we gave in, through that money, being able to rebuild people's lives, that sticks with me as one of the most joyous experiences I've had.
Well, and you could see that joy extended even through to when, you know, you were cracking the whip and carrying on with Peter last year, which I love that event. Now, I've got to give Rita and Troy both a chance to say something to you. Rita's in Melbourne. The great man is just in a humble shack in the middle of the bush.
It is. It's very humble, Paul, very humble.
Well, Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you and to watch you and to learn from you. What are you going to do now with the extra hours you have in your day? Your work ethic is second to none. You survive on what? 3 or 4 hours sleep a night? Are you going to actually get a solid 8 hours of sleep now?
Yeah, well, Rita, look, you're right. I won't. I was just saying to Charlie here, who's with our team, today, the thought that I won't have to get up at 2:30 in the morning, I've been doing that for 35 years, is an enormous release. However, we all need, I think, and I encourage people to enjoy intellectual rigour. You've got to keep writing, you've got to keep reading, you've got to keep prosecuting things that you believe in, and this is a wonderful medium here. The wonderful thing about Sky News, and I think this is a big forum of tomorrow, Sky News is only going to get better and better and better, and the calibre of the people here is outstanding, and it's unapologetic in terms of what it stands for. I can identify that, I enjoy it, and I look forward to that role, which I hope we'll do better than we've done in the past, which we all seek to do. The other thing, of course, is I enjoy the writing, and I'm doing that. And it may well be that there's one or two things that are convenient and comfortable in the time frame that's now available to me that I might undertake to do. But I'm not retiring. I'm just retiring from radio because it is the biggest component of my work. By the time I prepare in the morning, get up at ridiculous hours, do the program, answer the correspondence, prepare for the next day. And when the doctor spoke to me, they said, look, this is an enormous lump in your life. If you're going to cut back, if you're going to stop before you drop, then this is the thing that you should change. So I don't see much change in my life other than I'm not getting up at 2:30. I'll miss the radio family, of course, but at the same time, there is another family out there that we can enjoy through this wonderful medium here at Sky.
Absolutely. Troy, what do you want to say to Alan before we let him go to bed? He's been very generous tonight.
Well, Alan, I've got a lot of admiration for you, as you know, and you've always been extremely generous to me, which is very humbling about my writing, and you've had me on your program a number of times. And so my question is to you, because you've interviewed so many prime ministers, premiers, politicians, what's the secret that a politician needs to understand for them to be an interesting interview subject?
Yeah, well, firstly, that's a very good question. Look, Troy, you know the answer to your own question. They've got to do their homework. They've got to be across the brief. I remember speaking to a very, very senior politician when I was young and working for the Prime Minister, and I came in all excitedly and I said, look, we've got a case here. We can really knock the government. This is when the coalition was in opposition. We can really knock the government. You go, I've just been through this bill. It is ridiculous and draconian, and here are some points. And this wonderful man who's still alive looked up at me and he said, Alan, I haven't read a piece of legislation in all the time I've been here, and I'm not about to start now.
Wow.
Now, I admired his frankness, and we had a bit of a laugh about it, but the answer to that, if you're going to come on a Paul Murray show, you're going to come with Alan Jones or Peter Credlin or Troy Bramster, Rita Panahi, and any of these people, Chris Kenny, you've got to have done some homework. And if you want to succeed in anything, you can't escape the fact that the only way you can pass the exam is to do the homework. As my mother told me, the only thing you get without hard work is failure. And you've got to get up early, the first to turn the lights on in the morning and the last to turn them off at night. It's a pretty simple prescription. And we've got to encourage young people to understand that education, for example, today is passed off as a soft option. And I say to kids, it's not. You should be as exhausted when you leave the classroom from your endeavour as your dad is when he gets home, having worked the long day and sits down and thinks, thank God for that, give me a drink. You should feel exactly the same way. And we've got to inculcate that into our young people. And sadly, and this is where Morrison has been outstanding. Morrison was really a nobody, a suburban MP. Morrison's great strength is he digests a brief. He doesn't go to bed till he understands the detail. And in that last election, he could prosecute detail effortlessly. And this is a complicated area, this health thing and coronavirus. And his presentation to the nation every week has been outstanding. All he's doing is his homework. But look at the success that derives from doing the homework. That's the lesson to everybody.
King, I've got a present for you. The great Mark Latham has run out of the chamber for the chance to talk to you. He's doing it from his office right now. One great man speak to another. What do you want to say to Alan, Mark?
Well, Alan, congratulations on a magnificent radio career. It strikes me that it's not just the 35 years, not just the big audience, but the density of the information. You would have put more useful public information out there for the edification of the Australian public than anyone in our history. And I know that. I have that spot there just for this month anyway, the Mark Latham Day on a Wednesday, but nobody's better researched, does more homework, and I wish you all the best into the future. I'm quite glad you're putting your health first because, quite frankly, you've been putting the show, the public, your public duty first, but there does come a time when you've got to look after yourself, and I hear you're becoming a professional punter with all that spare time that you've got on board, and I hope it's an improvement on some of the tips you gave me one day at Randwick. Good luck to you.
You are a wonderful, wonderful talent, Mark Latham, and I'm so glad Australia have rediscovered you. We're deeply in your debt, and we look forward to working with you to achieve more objectives in the years ahead. But thank you for taking the time to talk to us tonight.
King, thank you very much to you. As I said, mate, honestly, you taught me how the world worked. You've guided. And look, for everyone you have lifted up, those who've met you, know you, and have never met you, thank you very much, mate. I look forward to, as I say, many more years and learning from you every day.
Very grateful, Paul. Thank you very much.
See you later. The great Alan Jones. He's coming off the radio, but he's coming into Sky News. So strap in. It's going to be fun for many years to come.